Fall football season is around the corner, and that means you're about to do the yearly gamble where you figure out with the team you're playing on this year, what helmet and what shoulder pads are they going to give you. And helmets are honestly the easy part. It's kind of simple. Most teams nowadays either stock Speed Flexes or an F7, or sometimes you'll get a Visus or a Light, but like there's no true like terrible helmets on the market anymore like there used to be. There's good stuff pretty much for everyone. But at this point, shoulder pads, there is no standard like that, and sometimes you could end up with something just terribly awful. Now, in case you end up with a pair of dusty ass pads, here's a bunch of tips and tricks you can do to try and make these pads a little more desirable over the next couple months. And you'll want to stick around to the last group because they're going to be a little controversial. All right, first things, fit and comfort. This is always where it starts. Now, the first one is making sure that you get the right size set of shoulder pads, and that starts by measuring your shoulder width and your chest properly. Now, occasionally before the year, some equipment managers will reach out to everyone on the team and ask for some basic measurements, and that way they can look at their inventory to make sure everyone coming in that year, they have gear covered for, you know, in case there's like 20, 100-pound kids instead of, 20, 200-pound kids. Like, everyone needs different stuff. So anyways, they might ask for your measurements, and here's some things to make it easier. Now, if they are asking for your measurements, you do not want to use a tape measure like this. So if they're asking for the measurement of your chest, you're trying to go across here, it just doesn't bend your chest, and you kind of get this in the middle, and that doesn't radius properly, it's not going to work. Same thing, if they're trying to go from AC joint to AC joint on your shoulders, it's really just going to end up with a big hump in the middle like this. Not an effective way to measure. Instead, grab something flexible. In my case, I usually use a belt. So what I do is I take this belt and then I replicate the measurement they're looking for. So for example, if they're asking you to measure from AC joint to AC joint, it's generally behind the neck, around the back of your shoulders, and you're going to where you feel these bump on your shoulders. You put it across, you find the 2 points. Again, helpful to have someone else. You get those. I'm going to use the edge of the belt like here to get it where I want. Okay, now I take this because this is a flexible material and I translate it to the tape measure. So I go from tape measure from the point of my finger down to the bottom of the belt, and that gets me at 18. And so that's a better way to measure than using something just like a tape measure. Now, the reason this measurement is so crucial is because most of the shoulder injuries that happen related to football and shoulder pads is the AC joint. So you want to make sure you get that measurement properly, and don't just size it down because you want a smaller pair of pads. If those pads are too small, your AC joints are not covered by the padding, you're just asking to get injured. So make sure, measure properly, have some help if you need, and use something flexible. All right, the next one is one that I've talked about before, and like I didn't cover it fully. Like I didn't do a good job of covering it. So I always talked about you want to make sure that you test your mobility and stuff with the pads on. And I always show in the video, I'm doing like this. Yeah, I go up, I go down, I do that. But one thing I never talk about is your stance. So especially if you're a lineman, if you're a long snapper, if you're anyone on the field, quarterback, running back, doing any of these kind of different maneuvers, you want to make sure you practice all the different moves and stances you do in a game with those shoulder pads. So don't just stand in front of the equipment manager, raise your arms up and down, make sure, get in your stance, make sure you have the mobility. If you're a long snapper, you got to get those arms way in front of you, make sure you do those movements. All right, next one is going to be layer up to make it realistic. So if you're someone that just wears compression underneath your pads, make sure you're wearing that same compression shirt when you're testing it out. Now, personally, when I was younger, I always wore a compression shirt, and then after that, I actually switched to just like a t-shirt. Probably not the right move, but if you're someone that wears like Zoom bangs, so if you're wearing a padded compression shirt like this, the fit of the shoulder pads is going to be different. If you have a rib protector, if you have shoulder protection, anything like this is going to change the fit of those shoulder pads. So make sure when you're going to try on the shoulder pads, have the same stuff that you're going to wear underneath. It'll be way different. All right, so the next one is going to be, if you're getting someone else's shoulder pads, make sure to tighten everything down so it's a good fit for you. Now, I actually don't have a pair of shoulder pads like this anymore, but a lot of pads still, they have those kind of bungee cords. Make sure you tighten those things down every single time. So take all the things you need to do with the shoulder pads, make sure they're fit for you, not the person that wore them before you. All right, so there's a bunch of simple things you can do to at least make sure the pads they're giving you are ones that fit well and are generally comfortable. Now, here's some things to do, make sure we take care of them, get them up to speed. Let's talk care and maintenance. So what's important with shoulder pads is you got to remember, most shoulder pads on the market, not all, but most shoulder pads are some sort of open cell foam material. And what that foam means is throughout practice, you're getting sweat, you are getting water, and it is getting trapped in this foam, which means that it's going to breed bacteria and stay wet. So you need to make sure you do a couple things every single practice. Number one is going to be wipe these things down. So you could either get like a Clorox wipe or some sort of alcohol-based wipe down the shell of the pads and make sure they're completely clean. Then on the inside of the pads, you're going to want to spray them with some kind of mixture. Now, personally, in the past, I used a 1 part vinegar to 1 part water ratio. You can look online, there's tons of simple solutions that you can use to basically just spray down the inside of the pads and help kill any of that bacteria. Now, once you've sprayed them down, it's not done there, because then the day they're still wet, you need to give them space to air out. So don't just leave these things in your backpack, because it's a dark, cold, humid humid place. That's exactly where bacteria wants to grow. Make sure at the end of every practice, take these shoulder pads out and let them air out on your balcony, outside, even in the basement, somewhere with open air. And the last thing you want to do to make sure you're maintaining your pads is every so often give them a check, right? Your pads they're not really your pads, they're the team pads. And that means they're not always paying attention to a lot of this stuff. Check all the rivets every game, right? Check these rivets, make sure nothing is coming loose, nothing isn't the way it was a year ago. Make sure all the straps are still there. There's no cracks in the shell. There's no cracks anywhere in here, right? Still a good pair of pads for you to wear safely. So just do some routine checks while you're kind of cleaning them off daily. All right, now before we go to the last section, we're going to talk about this video sponsor, Legion shoulder pads. Now, if you guys missed it, we actually did a video on these a couple weeks ago on their M80 version, and these are a youth shoulder pad at this point, and they're absolutely fantastic. Now, everything we've talked about for the previous tips, you are not going to have a problem with these pads. Some of the things that make Legion unique is going to be their design on the inside. So when we're looking at the foam on the inside, it is a closed cell foam, which means it doesn't absorb any moisture, it doesn't hold any sweat, and that means you don't have to dry these things out like those other ones because it doesn't absorb into the material. These things stay dry the entire time, which is fantastic. It means they will not breed bacteria. Also, in that closed cell foam, they have all these active air channels that kind of channel all the sweat, all the air out, and then it kind of breathes out of the pad and makes it so you stay cool, but also gets all that mold and stuff out of there. So it's a really good pad as far as maintaining, making sure you are safe and clean. Now, outside of that, one of the reasons that parents don't buy pads for their kids is because they're only going to last them a couple of years. When you're playing football, you're growing so fast, shoulder pads are just not going to last, and parents are more likely to buy their kid a helmet because it's like one size, maybe like a medium to a large, but shoulder pads, they could be changing every single year. And with the price of them, I understand. But with the Legion pads, these things are only $99. So that means they're a very affordable option to get every couple of years for your kid as they get older. So if you want to try these out for yourself, go check out Dick's Sporting Goods. They have them in store and in stock online. We'll leave it linked in the description down below. As well, go check out our last video. We did a deep dive on all the different technologies. For the price, these things are an absolutely fantastic pad, so highly recommend you check these out. All right, next, we're looking at some things you can do to the pads to take a basic pair of shoulder pads, give them a couple upgrades to make it a little better for you. The team won't love this, and some of them might void the warranty, but it's something you might want to consider. I'm not saying do this, I'm just saying here's some ideas. So the first one is going to be a back plate, right? Back plates are just an easy way to take a boring pair of shoulder pads, add a back plate onto the back of them. Every single shoulder pads on the market now can accept a back plate. So make sure you try one out for yourself, put it on the back. It'll give it a little more style, give you a little more protection. Not a bad option. All right, the second one is going to do with your straps here. Have you ever seen on someone where it looks like they just have really pointy nipples on the field? That's because they have their pair of shoulder pads, it has the belt buckles, and they just like stick out in front like this, and it pushes your practice jersey away and makes it look like you just have these big pointy nipple boobs, and it's just weird. Now, not all companies have this, but the Legion M80 pads do. They have a little capture thing where this can slip inside, and that's good, so it gets out of the way exactly like it's supposed to be. But if your pads do not have that, you do have a couple options. The first thing you could do is cut the straps. Again, find where they fit you, make sure you're not cutting them too short, and cut them down to an appropriate length. That's why the team won't love this. The second one you could do though is take some Velcro. So you can buy Velcro on Amazon that has an adhesive back to it. Take one piece of the Velcro, stick it on the back here, take the other piece of Velcro, stick it on here, and that way you can just stick it to there. It comes off really easy. But that way when you're running around, it stays nice and down on there too. And the Velcro is good because it can come on and off and on and off, whereas like a double-sided tape, not something you'd want to use because it'll just lose its stick really fast. So there's a little tip to make it easier to keep these buckles down. Now, the next one is for if you have a really old pair of shoulder pads, when you're running around, you hear that flap, 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 like the entire time you're running. It goes the entire time, up and down, up and down, up and down. And it's just so annoying to hear. So you have a couple things you could do. The first one is going to be Velcro. So you could use the same Velcro, put a piece of Velcro on the bottom of the epaulette here, and then put another piece of Velcro on the top of the epaulette here, stick them together, and then they'll move together. Now that will limit the mobility of the shoulder pads, and depending on the pads, that might not be a good thing if you're already risking some mobility, but depending on you and the person, might be an option. Another thing you can do there, if you don't want to do the Velcro, you could use double-sided tape. So you could tape them together, or one a little more drastic, again, probably the least recommended, is you could actually drill through here, drill through the bottom of here, and put a zip tie through it, and that way they will stay together. I don't recommend that one, but it is like a permanent solution if you don't want to do it. Personally, I would do the Velcro that way in case of really big mobility. You go up for a big catch, the Velcro can let go like it's supposed to, and then snap back down and Velcro together. That is one thing they noticed with the Legion pads is most people didn't really need the second epaulette, so they basically just took it, and then they put one epaulette on the top here with then two pads underneath, and that way you don't get that clicky clacky noise, but you still get all the same level of protection. So another reason I really like these M80 pads. All right, there you guys go. There's a ton of different tips and tricks you can do to take these boring shoulder pads you get from their team and make them a little more customized, a little more personal for you, a little better fit, and a little more clean. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to check out the Legion shoulder pads linked in the description down below. Again, thanks for watching. I'll check you next time.